that most people, when they look at the game, they just don't want to do any of that stuff. They just want to play with their friends, have a beer, and that's it. And most people are like that in sports. The average person just wants to go and jump on a trampoline a little bit, maybe do an odd competition here and there, but they do not want to sit there and try to figure out what is the long-term trajectory of the broadcasting schedule to try to get a sport to beat a Ninja Warrior time slot and get a good licensing fee for it. They don't know how to do it. They don't want to do it. For them, it's more like, I just want to play a game, and if you are going to provide me that game, the same reason people like governments, even though they want to complain about it, without a government, you would be Lord of the Flies, and it would be an absolute nightmare.
Hey, Greg. Yo,
Hey,
nice to meet you, sir.
how are you doing? Good to have you
Hey,
on the podcast here. It's cool.
man, so excited for this conversation and to see what we can learn about trampoline and maybe talk some theory about associations and how that relates to the parkour world. Should be real fun. Would you
Yeah.
mind giving all of our viewers an overview of the Freestyle Trampoline Association and you and what you do and what you're working on? Maybe 2 minutes max, just so people can ground themselves in who you are and why we're talking today.
I was gonna say, how much time you got? No,
Yeah, right.
I'll keep it short and to the point. I was on the Team Canada back in the day, and I basically saw that there were some issues with the way the whole system worked. I ended up getting a really lucky sort of opportunity to go with Nitro Circus. They saw some of my online videos back in like 2010, 11, and said, hey, come and do a tour with us. And we'll put a super trampoline in the middle of the stadium with motocross and BMX and R. Willie and Travis, all these guys doing their thing. So I got to tour with them in Australia, and that gave us the idea for freestyle trampoline. For you guys who do not know, Olympic trampoline has been around for many, many years and was put into the Olympics in 2000. But since then, it's seen a steady decline over the years, just with social media and trampoline parks popping up and people just becoming more free and not wanting to necessarily do all of the traditional sports, we'll call them. So what that did is give us a bit of an opening to say, let's rethink trampoline. So we called it the Freestyle Trampoline Association. We did our first official event called GT Games, Garden Trampoline Games, in 2017 in Escondido, California. And that all of a sudden just blew up. We didn't even realize we were tapping into this market of all these kids in their backyards that were just going nuts and doing quad backflips and triple this and quint that, and we're like, what's going on? Because we were still thinking about the traditional Olympic side, traditional gym clubs, sign up, become a member, compete with your leotard and all that. That still was in the forefront of everyone's mind. This little garden trampoline sect over here just did not exist. But we didn't know that they were talking online for many, many years. So what we ended up doing is saying, look, let's grab that kind of community. Let's give them a platform. They're a lot more like the Nitro Circus guys. This is a fresh start, fresh mind state. You don't just go to the old traditional guys and tell them to change their ways. You start with a fresh, new, open system that then you can now put and then, build it towards helping the traditionals, but you got to start separate. You do not just ask them to change. And that we can maybe talk about that psychology of that a little bit later. But from there, we basically said, look, we're going to make this platform. We're going to do GT Games. It blew up on New York Times, LA Times, Steve Harvey, Ellen DeGeneres has covered some of the athletes that have been at the event. The list just goes on. And all of a sudden on Google Trends, it went like this, and you could see it. It was the sport born on Instagram officially now. And we ran with that. We did events all over the world from 2017 to COVID. And we planted seeds all over the place that became our future partners, future sponsors, future athletes, future clubs, kind of like a traditional system. And when COVID hit, we had to rethink. We'll get into all that. It's esports and franchising, virtual reality, all these kind of cool things that we're dabbling in now. But once the COVID was over, World Champs was up on 2022, and that set the stage for now what is becoming the World Series for freestyle trampoline. And as of this year, we just finished our World Champs. We added a girls category in. We added new countries. We got more broadcasts. We actually had a good, decent broadcast with our partners at Extreme or Unreal Channel. And everyone's super happy. And now we have signed an exclusive long-term deal with Eurotramp, which is the Olympic trampoline supplier, for us to do freestyle with them, which is a landmark contract because no one's really done anything like that before. And now basically the traditional side is being told by the IOC that, hey, your stuff isn't so cool anymore, your viewership is down, no one's excited, you need to change, or we might de-Olympify you by 2028. And this is coming from the federations. This is not my random belief. This is coming from them. So they are now on the chopping block, and they're looking to quickly pivot to make sure that they're still relevant in the digital sports age, I guess we'll call it. And we are at the forefront of leading that for at least the trampoline side, kind of following the steps of parkour, which is really cool that we can have this conversation because we're just a few years behind you guys. And the way that the traditional system has been able to work with parkour and try to kind of, take some of their values, whether you like it or not, I'm sure we'll discuss that. But we are in the same position with trampoline, where trampoline's now, on its dying breaths, and maybe we can revamp it a little bit to give us some new life, reposition it, and be able to have a bright future for the athletes, the federations, maybe the Olympics, X Games, wherever.
So to recap, it's a fascinating, like almost an exponential change, because what I hear you saying is that you start out doing gymnastics, you did trampoline. In 2017, you're still thinking, I don't know, maybe more traditional, but I don't see you as a traditional guy. Like, I read a little bit about you, you're a free thinker, you're doing your thing. You host this competition in 2017, and that's what catalyzes maybe the paradigm shift in you to realize, wait a second, this new style of trampoline competition can be something. And then it sounds like you found the Freestyle Trampoline Association, and then you just start creating from there, which is creating relationships, running events. And then that's grown to a position now where you're saying, okay, traditional trampoline in the Olympics, which is never on TV for some reason, because it sounds super cool. But in America, they just show ice skating and gymnastics, depending on if it's winter or summer Olympics, and track and field, like the main cores. You get these niche small sports that don't show on the Olympics, on the broadcast, at least for us. But trampoline, so there's a reason you never see it, because the audience doesn't see it. And now you're saying trampoline is now by the IOC is saying, hey guys, this is kind of boring. We're adding new sports, snowboarding and skateboarding. You guys need to update. And you're thinking that freestyle trampoline is kind of possibly the next evolution of high profile trampoline competitions. And you're in the right position to hopefully make that transition and make freestyle trampoline global. Kind of a fair synopsis. What am I missing there?
Yep, that's
Okay.
No, you did a good job. That's basically a very simplified version of lots of different research and lots of different strategies, relationship building, like you mentioned. But yes, that is the position, and it's not just our figment of our imagination. You see these guys, they claim this and claim that. This is coming from the traditional side as well. This is coming from Eurotramp, the federations. They're all in discussions with us now saying, guys, we're in trouble. We need some help. We want to do a B2B partnership with you guys. We want to learn from what you guys are doing. Kind of walk us through how you guys got this far. Like you said, it was an exponential growth. But again, it wasn't just because we're geniuses patting ourselves on the back. There was a lot of factors that came in: social media, trampoline parks, the fact the industry was already kind of struggling, and some of the behind the scenes issues that were definitely making everyone a little bit weary of it anyway. We'd be able to come in at the, let's say, a lucky, opportune time, but with our head on straight, ready to go, knowing where we want to go in 20 years. And ready to be able to help the community. We're not trying to destroy traditional trampoline. I love trampoline's a trampoline. I don't care if you're a traditional freestyle or if you're a tumbler on a fast track or if you're at Cirque du Soleil doing that cool net that Dave Locke and all these guys are doing. It's a bouncy item. It's a bouncy item, and let's figure out what we can do with it, but let's rethink what we can do about it. Because I look at this huge open field of all, great vegetables and flowers and different things you can do, and I'm trying to figure out why we're only doing this one little type of competition called individual trampoline and synchro with the same 10 skills that everyone's doing, looking the same, and then we scratch our head wondering why no one wants to watch it over 20 years. I can tell you why. And and this is where, guys, let's rethink, let's get out of the box and revamp the entire thing, from the culture to the educational models, to the way people view it, to the way people participate in it, to the way, are you an amateur sport or professional sport? We are making it a professional sport. We are trying to get these guys sponsorships and say, no, guys, if you really want your sport to thrive, you're going to need to get your athletes paid. Obviously, we're only 6 years in, so we have a long ways to go, and only a handful of our athletes are getting sponsorships currently right now. but that is the trajectory of being able to reposition the entire community so that the GoPros and the G Fuels and the Red Bulls and all these kind of bigger companies will actually look at it and say, hey, our brand belongs with this activation. And that's what we're essentially trying to do, but we want to do it with the traditional
Well, I see
system,
your vision.
not
What I
against
want to do is I want to ground the conversation in like either base theory, like the base theory approach, or in story. So I think what's curious to me is to talk about what started a conversation between us before we got here to the podcast. And that was on LinkedIn, I believe. Someone on LinkedIn posted something about, oh, I know, it was a guy from Parkour, Iran. Is that who it is? Anyway, there was some guy who posted something about he wanted the parkour community to work together, I think. This is coming back to me. Before this podcast, I thought, how did we start talking? And now I couldn't remember, but now I'm remembering, oddly enough. There was some post about someone saying the parkour community needed to work together to create opportunity. And then I think that somehow tangented into talking about whether or not there needed to be national or international parkour associations or federations of some type. And I think I was arguing that there didn't need to be one, but you were arguing that there did need to be one. And then, of course, the Freestyle Trampoline Association came into that. Is this what you remember? And I'm hoping this catalyzes us to talk about what a Freestyle Trampoline Association is and whether or why not there isn't one in parkour. Some nestled question.
Yeah, from mine. Yeah, no, I'm with you. From my memory, it was, yes, this the Iranian parkour guy. I think he's actually part of their federation. I'm not sure 100%. But he's been really nice, and I just kind of chit chat with him. I don't have any real experience with him, but he's been really nice. But it did spark the idea, because I think this is where you and I had differed a little bit. It's like, well, should sport just be free, and should it just be kind of open to anyone, and there's no constraints, just be free and let live kind of thing. And then I was saying, well, that's a good that's one option. But then you also look at the way that the economy is built and just world history is that in a practical sense, the humans just don't work in that sort of way. When you start bringing in personality theory and just the human emotion and human natural compulsions and stuff like that, when it actually plays out in the real world, then you get a slightly different outlook or outcome that isn't just free into the world. And I think that's where you and I think we want the same thing, but I think we look at it from
let's talk about it. And by the way, I think that's before we go any further, his name is Nader Asghari, and he's the former head coach of the Iran parkour national team. Pretty active on LinkedIn, and from my interaction, he's a great guy. So tell me this. Your theory is that sports need an association. Is that accurate? And tell me in the most simplest form or way why. You touched on a few points.
I don't think they need an association. I think an association is what inevitably comes out of the need to do the sport. So I look at it like, because we actually built up this community from nothingness, just kids in their backyards. And the more I've learned from doing this practically, and I've had to learn myself, like this is not just, I know how to build sports. Not, we had to learn as we go. And one thing that's been very evidently clear to me is that there are a handful of athletes that want to take that charge, and they want to do stuff, and they want to volunteer, and they want to, really be leaders of a community. And there's the other ones that would rather be led instead. And this just naturally sort of people come into these two camps. And I think this is what creates this natural tendency for let's say the more go-getters, we'll say, because there's a lot of ways you could characterize people. So I don't want to put them into boxes, but there's those more go-getters, and they tend to find themselves coming together in a smaller group, and then taking the charge, which then you call an association after, it kind of forms over years. And so I think it's the fact that people want to do sport that creates the federation, because it says, hey, I can look to you to know that you're going to deliver this that I'm kind of getting part of. And if you just had none of it, it would be chaos, and there'd be no formalization. It'd be like the same reason that we have words. You have 50,000 words in the normal English lexicon, we'll say, but not 20 million. And this is because everyone has to learn to sort of depend on a certain select few to give structure to everything else, or you're just free floating. Everyone's just speaking gibberish to each other. And if you just kind of extrapolate that to more of a sports sort of analogy, then you're doing essentially the same thing. And the smaller amount of people that really want to take that lead and that charge and do that extra little bit of work, and for them it's more of like a job, I guess. And they want to be put into it, they eventually make an association,
Let me
essentially.
understand this.
And this
I'm
just
pretty sure I can
develops.
explain both sides, but I'm gonna act like I have no idea. Let's say you play board games. What's your favorite board game? Monopoly, classic game.
I
Grew up
love
playing with my dad. I can never.
Monopoly.
So,
Monopoly.
Monopoly. People play Monopoly. I've never heard of, and there may be a Monopoly International Monopoly Association. Now, Monopoly is owned by, what is it? What's the company? I forget the name. HB or something. Hasbro. I don't know who owns it. Someone owns Monopoly. Some interesting legal history with the Monopoly game, and the game was actually stolen, and they don't own the rights to it, but they own the pieces, etc. But that being said, Monopoly is a game people play without having an association. They go buy the game, they teach their friends and family, they compete, they have fun. There's also, I believe, a Monopoly World Championship. So there is some sort of body, governing body of some type, or at least some organizational structure that brings Monopoly into you could say, a bigger capacity. But it doesn't seem to be like Monopoly, the game, needs an association to thrive. It does kind of need an owner through the game company to produce it and distribute it. Why does a sport need an association?
The same reason, like you said, it's just a distributor and a builder and a patent holder and a financial wizard that makes sure that the balance sheets balance and all that sort of stuff. That most people, when they look at the game, they just don't want to do any of that stuff. They just want to play with their friends, have a beer, and that's it. And most people are like that in sports. The average person just wants to go and jump on a trampoline a little bit, maybe do an odd competition here and there, but they do not want to sit there and try to figure out what is the long-term trajectory of the broadcasting schedule to try to get a sport to beat a Ninja Warrior time slot and get a good licensing fee for it. They don't know how to do it. They don't want to do it. For them, it's more like, I just want to play a game, and if you are going to provide me that game, the same reason people like governments, even though they want to complain about it, without a government, you would be Lord of the Flies, and it would be an absolute nightmare. But instead, you say, look, I need at least someone that I can depend on that will keep my structure in place so that I can just play the game and just focus on that one little
That's a good
part
explanation
that I care
Maybe
about. I don't have to
I
build the
see
whole
it
thing.
based on this conversation is that you have all this energy, and we'll take parkour as an example, but I think it overlaps with the trampoline quite well. You have all these people doing stuff, right? And maybe they call it parkour, maybe they call it trampoline, maybe they call it freestyle trampoline, but you have people doing something that's pretty similar. In the parkour world, well, we're practicing certain techniques in certain locations, and there's this community around ideas and movements and training. In the trampoline world, it's similar. They're all doing this thing around this bouncy thing, I think, to use your terms, or netting or whatever you called it. There's this consistency, congruency pattern in what people are doing. And yet at the same time, it's very fragmented because you have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people just kind of doing it. An association, from your vision, brings people together and focuses that energy towards maybe something higher, like a legitimate competition structure. It focuses the energy so that you could say the athletes then have something that they can market and sell, which then brings in advertising dollars, which then gets paid, and then brands grow, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds to me like you see associations, or maybe this is just me, as an organizing structure for the energy, for the game or sport, which then elevates that activity and brings people together.
Yeah, I would say that's a really succinct way of putting it. And yeah, it's an enzyme. It helps you. Your reaction would probably happen over millions and millions and billions of years, but enzymes come and make it happen that much faster. And when you look at it from a biological perspective, it seems to be kind of accurate, or at least theoretically. Everyone's got their own opinion. So, but I see that, yeah, it condenses the energy, puts it into one focal point, so that you are aiming at a target by taking all those individual personalities and value structures and journeys that everyone's on their own individual mind, and you're putting them all together into one location so that
Oh, very
everyone
cool.
can
I don't think I've
benefit a
ever
bit
thought
more
of it this
rather
way.
than just
And I also
going all
love
over
the
the
idea you
place.
just had about biological entities, because you could think of each individual in some ways as an association. Like I'm the association of Adam Dunlap, you're the association of Greg Rowe, but then there's all these component individual parts and cells and structures that form. And then you think about something like the NBA and the National Basketball Association, and you think about all those individual component parts and people and ideas and brands and companies that come together to make that kind of this entity within basketball. Uh, I wonder sometimes if like the fractal universe, if that's what you believe in or something, like we're manifesting that through consciousness in other forms. And biological entities are this one thing that took, however you believe it, maybe took a long time, maybe it was immediate, who knows? But it was biological structures, and then consciousness and humanity then create their own kind of version of biological structures, which are actually businesses or governments or countries or associations or something. It sounds like you're speaking of an association bringing those pieces together into cohesive one in kind of this powerful, decentralized but somewhat centralized way. That's fascinating.
Exactly, yeah. Because you just if you didn't have electromagnetism, your atoms couldn't even stick together. So you know you need that stuff, or you just don't have human bodies. And if you look at corporations, they do act a lot like human bodies. That's why they call them a corpse. Corporations. It's all the same sort of root words from back in the day, that they are coming together as an association, whether you're an anatomy association that comes together called the human body, with a general goal in your lifespan, compared to just atoms whizzing around randomly by themselves, or if you're a business, or, and there's a lot
Fascinating.
of
Okay, well then tell me this, because
crossover, and
this
there's a
gets
lot
us to
of
kind of the
repeating
crux
patterns, we'll
of the
say.
question, and maybe the crux of the problem with these issues is power. Who should be in charge, Greg? So you got the Freestyle Trampoline Association. Why are you in charge of it, or why should anyone be in charge of it? And how do you balance power versus different wants and ideas, etc.? Tell me your views on that. This episode is brought to you by one of the most storied brands in parkour history, Take Flight. Take Flight started as the world's first parkour clothing company in 2008, and they went on to work with parkour legends, including David Bell, Pasha Putkins, Toby Seeger from Store, and many others. They now make some of the world's best parkour shoes, and their second-gen Stealth Ultra X is just about the most comfortable shoe out there. That's great for high-impact, techie movement, and even just casual wear. Definitely check these shoes out, as well as all of Take Flight's made for parkour products. Use the link in our description, or head on over to their site at tkflt.com and use the code parkour10 to get 10% off any order. Support them as they support us, as we support the parkour community.
That's a big one. I'm still trying to figure it out, to be very honest. I'm also trying to figure out if we want to even be in power. That's a whole nother discussion too, and the reality is that the way we ended up getting into power is that we were kind of put into it. We ended up doing the first GT games in 2017 because a brand called us up and said, hey, I want to do a cool promotional marketing event. Okay, but you're going to pay me, $10,000 to do this? Yeah, here you go. Okay, you want me to MC? Yeah, okay. You want me to promote? Yeah, okay. It was just a paid gig. And then I just watched these guys throughout the whole time. I was like, this is actually pretty cool. And my brain started going, like, we can use this. This is really interesting, because these kids, I looked at it like, okay, we need value trading. Human interaction is all about value trading and trying to be as even as possible, right? No one just has no power, and no one just has all the power. It actually does become a value trade. It just different forms of value, like having different currencies. But at the end of the day, underlying all that, there is an equivalent to the yen and the British pound or something like this, right? And what we ended up seeing as we went, we said, hey, we're going to do this event, this event, this event. And at first it was just us saying, hey, this is cool. I want to see if we can do it. And let's see if we can make a few dollars doing it. And it's what I love to do. So if I can get paid to do what I love, then let's go, And then the kids said, hey, we want to get paid to do what we love too. And then we ended up doing an event in Sweden right after. And I literally sat down with like 50 of these athletes and said, guys, what do you want? And they go, oh, we want to get paid to do flipping. Okay, so that's the mandate. The kids told us this from the very beginning, and there's still kids that were from that exact meeting that still follow us and are assigned to us, you know what I mean, and come to our events now. And they know exactly who they are. So this was just sort of, all right, this is the mandate. I wanted to be able to show to my traditional system, hey, there's a better way you can do this, a cooler way, a more novel way that ultimately is better financially, economically, promotionally wise, better for the audience, better for everyone involved. Because back in the day, everyone just was complaining about everything. The federations were complaining, the athletes were complaining, the coaches were complaining. I'm like, guys, there's got to be a better way. So they were getting their way of saying, okay, Greg, you know what you're doing more than us. You've been in the industry for 20 years at this point. So you already can kind of lead us like a coach, essentially. I looked at them saying, hey, you guys can help inspire these old traditional guys to think differently. Wow, what a great value trade. You're helping me, I'm helping you. And if we can all make a little bit of money together, then it's a win-win. And that's how we started. And that's still how we operate today, right? But then what happened as we developed, then it was like, okay, well, who's going to now do the broadcasting? I wasn't going to call up a 17-year-old flipper, say, hey, are you going to help me get on ESPN or CBS? Oh, no, I had to do that. And okay, who's going to call up all the different trampoline parks and get them to actually agree to host you guys and actually do the sales pitch to make them actually believe in the concept when it hasn't been realized yet? Well, I'm going to do that, and I end up kind of putting myself indirectly into a leadership position because when I saw if I have an item list of all the things that need to be done to be a successful sport and ultimately their mandate, get paid to do flipping, I said, well, you have to then be a sport. You can't just be random kids in your backyard. So let's make you a sport. Okay, how do you make a sport? You got to do this, then this, then this. And my business partner, Trish, she was a pioneer in the rally racing world. So she has already built a sport in North America. She was the first ever female rally racer, brought the RX-7 car from Subaru to North America for the very first time back in, I think it was 1999 or 2000 or something like that. So she already knew this. So we worked together and we already had, literally decades of knowledge about how to do this before any of these athletes did, or their parents, or anyone for that matter. So we kind of indirectly said, okay, well, we're looking around looking for help. Well, we're the guys, I guess we'll do it. So we ended up investing in it. And we dumped in about $750,000 of our own money into all of the startup costs for this. People don't just pay you money because you want them to. They only want to give you money if they're going to make more money out of it. They only want to pay you your expenses if they're getting more value out of it. There's always this sort of discount factor in every human interaction at all points. You got to be creative to look for it sometimes and kind of smart to see where people pretend that it's equal, but it's really not. You know what I mean? And they do it both ways. So it's not a favoritism to one side or the other, the consumer versus big tech or something. No, they're both doing it to each other, and then this naturally plays out over the years. And then we say, okay, guys, well, we're only a B2B network, me and Trish, and we have some close people that we work with, but we're mostly a B2B network of people around the world. We don't have, a hardcore staff and, huge overhead and 30 people working for us doing all the work. So we said, guys, if you want to build a sport yourselves and you want to be part of it, well, then you got to help out. You got to get us in contact with local trampoline parks. You got to come and do some video shooting. You got to do judging. You got to do the DJing. You got to do all this sort of stuff. And no, you're not getting paid until everyone's getting paid. So it's a much more of a community crowdfunding model that we have taken, which I believe is somewhat of a closer step to a happy medium between all-knowing, all-powerful, closed system where no one knows what's going on, to then a defractionalized, completely out of control where everyone is too many chefs in the kitchen, but we then be able to bring it in sort of this happy medium crowd sort of funding sort of way. And this has naturally sort of evolved over the time. So the kids are doing a lot more. They're helping us write the rule books. They're helping us figure out what their overlays should be on the big screen. They're helping us say, what throw mats do you want to use? How do you want your schedule to be done? So we go to them and say, guys, what do you want? We look at them as they're almost like performers that then go on the stage. They perform for the broadcast, and then we turn around and try to sell the sponsorship to then get them paid. And you see it's like a loop. They have to be able to perform well, but we also have to give them a stage to perform on and help them get an audience to perform in front of, or it doesn't work. You can't just have one or the other. You need all of these coming together. And this is what essentially
what occurred to me was that
6-7 years.
In that last bit was that the mandate was help us make money from this. You went to the athletes and you say, what can we do? And they're like, well, we want to make money. We want to do what we're doing, but make money. And parkour is completely different because in the early days, the ethos was the opposite. It was, you can't make money from this. It was, you're a sellout if you make money from this. Do you think that I don't know. I don't know what there's to think about. It's an interesting difference.
I would say the question should be, should sport be something that you do for just a pure passion, or should it become professionalized in any way? Or maybe we should just take professionalism right off the table and completely change the
Yeah,
entire
let's dig
sports
into it.
landscape. Would that be a fair question to dig into? Well, I would say that you can look at, like you said, you can look at both sides. One, why wouldn't everything just be, it's free? If you don't really just have a passion for it, don't let money taint your behavior, right? And that's probably an easy one to kind of argue. But then you can say, well, yeah, but if I can get paid doing what I love, then I get to do more of it, and I'm naturally actually more likely to give back to the sport, back to the association, back to the community, back to my friends and family and all that sort of stuff if I'm happier because I'm doing something that I actually like, because I'm getting paid from it, not having to fractionalize myself to working at McDonald's to fund my parkour trip to my buddy's place. You know what I mean? And I can see both. And I kind of naturally lean on the other side, of course, because um, that's how everyone talks at least. And honestly, the parkour guys talk the same way. It might have been the way that they started off in this theory of, where it's all free and, essence. And I don't know what else. I'm going to put words in the parkour guys' mouths, obviously, but maybe that's how it started. But I talked to parkour guys and they wouldn't be doing it unless they got paid, and Red Bull was covering them or this, that, or the other. So I would say that there's maybe underlyingly, there's a bit more of that capitalism in the parkour world. I'm sure there's some purists, just like there's purists that don't compete in the freestyle trampoline world. You know what I mean? And you're going to get a mixed bag, of course. But I can see that there's two divisions. People that say, no, I want to get paid to do what I love so I can do more of it, and I'll be effectively better for the community because I'm getting covered to do this. Others saying, well, let's not taint
Sure.
the water supply with capitalism.
Well, I think parkour
And
evolved.
it
And
really depends
so,
on your philosophy.
15 years ago, it was a don't compete. Don't compete, don't make money. And that's not true. Maybe, yeah, about 15 years ago. What I started in 2006. So what is that, 17 years ago or something? And then it's grown from there. So people now accept competitions. They accept making money. So it's this evolution. Also, there's really a strong lack of competition is also at the core kind of ethos of the parkour sport. And so that's been interesting, is I think we had these barriers to kind of overcome psychologically, you could say, as a community that said, we don't want the money. We want to be purists. We don't want to compete because this discipline has a history of non-competition. But then kind of realizing, wait a second, competition can be good from the sport, good for the sport. It can help it evolve. It can bring in money. It can be a different wing of the sport. And so I think parkour is growing up, but it just sounds to me like trampoline didn't have some of those barriers.
I would I would agree. We didn't have well, we had different barriers, right? Parkour didn't have, you were still off to the side of traditional gymnastics, so they didn't even see it really as either a competitor or replacement or whatever they see it as now. When we said freestyle trampoline, we were literally butting heads with the old system directly. And if you look at like snowboarders, just like us, snowboarders were kicked off the hills because they're dangerous, urban, pot smoking, whatever's, blah, blah. And they got labeled, and then the traditional skiers kicked them off under this guise of safety and all that sort of stuff, which I think everyone now knows that's just blatantly not true, but it's still, that's the political fight that they're in. We entered the exact same political fight. People say, oh, Greg, I hope you break your neck. You're killing children, blah, blah, blah. This is all garbage, yada, 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 all this stuff. And we screen grabbed it, So it's like, haha, if their day comes where I want to, really drag it through the mud, I can. So a lot of the critics back then didn't realize that everything was being recorded, or they wouldn't have said half of it. But the reality is that we went through that political fight, and we had to prove that, no, this is not that bad. This is actually, we're using hard science here. I come from a kinesiology psychology background in university and all that. So I knew exactly what the research was actually saying about biological creatures, and say, no, guys, your facts are 40 years wrong. You're 40 years late to what you're doing. You're still preaching stuff that was back in the USSR. It's like, no, the world's evolved since then. We have new research now about human behavior, psychology and all that. So what you're saying is just factually incorrect. And obviously it's politically motivated because, back to capitalism, you're getting paid to try to demonize something that basically takes away your livelihood. Taxi versus Uber, first perfect example, right? It's the exact same thing that we are going through, because we basically said, you don't actually need a coach. If you're smart enough and you're motivated enough and have the determination to really put your pieces together and watch YouTube videos and talk to your buddies and figure all that stuff out, like the parkour guys had figured out. You don't need an overlord telling you how to rotate your body. You just need to go figure out how to do it safely and progressively. And just like any other sport, you will figure it out. And the biology was very clear. For hundreds of years, the biology has been very clear about that. It's just people have ignored that stuff because they say, oh, if everyone could just do it for free, I don't get a fee as a middleman. Quick, let's tell them it's impossible. Let's quickly put up some barriers to entry, and then that'll get me paid as a consultant. And this happens all the time. And I got a guy right now pitching me to get on like DraftKings, and he's like, "Oh, you'll never get on there without someone like me opening those doors and get you with the data companies that you need." Oh, I'm the guy. I'm like, okay, yeah, or whatever. But this is just what people do because that's how they make a living. So, you can try to beat the capitalism out of people, but it's in there, ingrained in the DNA in multiple different ways. So I think it's a futile fight to try to fight the whole thing. I'd rather harness that energy and reposition it so it actually helps more people rather than trying to pretend that you're just a perfect moralistic.
There's a time and a place for a coach.
More damage.
Even the best in the world have had coaches, right? So Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson, and he had a trainer. Arnold Schwarzenegger had people to help him learn to pose. We all have those people in our lives that come along and help us, whether it's friends or people we pay. But then at the same time, there's also this paradigm that some people are incentivized to propagate, and that's that you need me, right? And so I think when I got into parkour, when I saw people doing really good flips, I immediately assumed, of course, they were in gymnastics. And I think for a time there, the only people who learned how to flip were gymnasts. But then, of course, the paradigm is open, and we've realized you could have immaculate form and not have ever been a gymnast because you teach yourself. And so it's interesting, those kind of that change, and maybe the freedom that comes with realizing that we don't necessarily need some of those traditional structures to do what we want to do or become what we want to become.
Well, and I'm with you that, yes, a coach can help because these kids almost coach each other, peer-to-peer coaching, essentially. And that's a form of help. People need help. They need the government to do, construction for them and stuff like this. People need help. They will not survive on their own, like Henry David Thoreau, in a cabin or something, writing books. That's not how it actually works. People need each other, and it's very evident from the biology and the world history, really. But I think the realities that we're seeing that we need to depend more on ourselves, and I at one level, I see the kind of how this is all opening up with all the new gender categories and just the openness and, the war on the racism and all these other different things that are coming out. I'm seeing this general overriding pattern that, no, I am who I am, and I'm unique in my own way, and I need to be able to show that in my own way. And obviously you can criticize it for, some application errors, we can call it, the way they've done it. But I think the fundamental core of them saying, I'm taking control over my life, I think that's actually a good thing. I see too many people that kind of are taught that, well, mom and dad have to do it for you, and the teacher has to do it for you, and everyone has to do things for you. And I think that just creates a weak society where you're just, well, I'm going to wake up and say, who's going to do it for me today? You know what I mean? No. You better get off your butt and start working, and I'd like to see that society. And if we had a society where a lot of those traditional, I gotta do it for you, structures were at least diminished, if not eliminated in some way, I think you'd see a stronger society with less depression, less anxiety, less sort of ADHD confusion, because you don't get to be confused when you're doing it yourself. You get your own vision. You know what you want. Right now, everyone's bombarding with their own opinions. Of course, kids are confused. I'd be confused. I'd be like, what? But what you said contradicts that person. Yeah, but don't listen to them. I'm smarter. Well, but how do I know? Oh, because you were going to pay me more. Oh, I don't know. I don't have any money. And this kind of thing just confuses people, just gets them not knowing and spinning in circles without a solution. Of course, they're going to be more anxious and prone to whatever social anxiety issues that they have. I'm not surprised at all. And no, it's not just because of social media. It's the adults too. They're not helping. You know what I mean? So I don't like when people demonize one thing, but completely ignore the contributing factors of the other 33 things that they just forgot to
getting too much into politics, which I know everyone hates and everyone loves at the same time. there's kind of two factions, I think, in America, to be very general. And one is that the people fix the problems, and the other one is that government fixes the problems, right? And I find it interesting to think about how some people say, no, like, we can solve the problems. And other people say, no, we can't. Just, we should raise taxes so we can give it and the government will solve the problem, right? Or like immigration. It's like, it's not my problem. I'm not going to accept immigrants into my house, but I want the government to allow immigrants into the country. And then you say, well, where are they going to live? Anyway, so I'm not here to have an opinion about what's right or wrong. Not on the podcast. In my personal life, I might. But except I'm just here to say that some people want autonomy, and other people feel kind of like they're the underlings of more powerful forces who can actually, solve the problems. And maybe I'm not on the same track I was when I first thought of this. But anyway, you see the point. The point is the people who are like, I can't learn without a coach. I can't solve this problem without the government. And other people are like, well, maybe we just learn to backflip on our own. Like, why don't we do that? Why don't I just learn to vault on my own? And look, if you're 6 years old or something, you should probably go to a parkour gym and have a coach and, help learn some stuff, but at some point you can be autonomous and teach yourself and progress on your own. So this episode is brought to you by Insta360 Flow. Insta360 Flow is a company that makes AI stabilizing gimbals and AI stabilizing cameras for you to film parkour and to film your adventures. We've received one at parkour.com and it is absolutely amazing. You'll feel the quality right out of the box. And after the first use, you'll ask yourself, why didn't I have this sooner? You basically attach your phone to the stabilizer and you immediately have a world-class gimbal, perfect for anybody making a parkour video, or if you just travel and like to take some snaps. Click the link in our bio to check out their products. We get a small kickback from every purchase if you use the link, so please check them out. It helps us immensely to keep the podcast going and bring on amazing guests for you.
I agree. And I think like anything, living at the extremes of any spectrum is usually probably not a great idea. You probably want a little bit of mix of all of them. Like I coach online snowboarders. This one guy, Lorenzo, is trying to get on the Olympic team for Italy, and we just kind of chit chat. And then sometimes he's injured right now, but we call him up and then he says, hey, I'm trying to get funding. And we just kind of, okay, well, let's talk. He has a real estate license and all that stuff. Oh, let's brainstorm about how you can use that real estate license to raise the $50,000 you need to do the world circuit to go to the next Olympics, and stuff like that. And just having someone to bounce ideas off that doesn't think the way you think, even if it's not 100% guaranteed a solution, it's still very valuable to be exposed to different ideas. And I think that there's that happy medium of having different ideas bombarded at you at let's say, a consistent and tolerable rate, versus one person that's just throwing one opinion at you at a either tolerable or intolerable rate, or just having so many different things bombarded at you, you don't know which one to believe, and you get basically option paralysis, essentially, and you just don't know which one to pick. So now you're more likely to not do anything. You know what I mean? So have somewhere in the middle there, I think is good. I just don't like what I saw for 20 years in the traditional system. I still see it now. They all say, well, I'm doing it to help the athlete. But they're like this, I'm going to control you, But of course, they don't use those words. They use morality and they use all these cover-ups to say that, oh, what I'm doing is so required because these people cannot possibly survive without me. That's all I'm hearing. I'm like, oh, okay, guys, I think you need to get off your soapbox a little bit first. And you need to maybe teach them how to survive without you. If they cannot survive without you, then you're partly the problem. You're creating a dependency problem, and psychology is riddled with theories about how people indirectly do this subconsciously. And I think the traditional system has a lot more of that than they realize. Not everyone, but definitely an undiscussed factor that I think is not helping them, that they need to address
and I'll
do some research on.
Because we agree at a deeper level, you'd be much better at articulating this than me. Clearly, the idea, though, is that you have some coaches or people that position themselves in your life such that you always need them, versus the coaches or people who are there to help you progress so that you can be self-sufficient. And maybe the best example would be a helicopter parent, maybe, who doesn't let their kids ever take risks or experiment anything. They're there all the time. If they have a problem, they give you money, blah, 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 blah. That kid grows up and then he always needs that because that's how he's formed psychologically, versus the kids who are raised in parents who are like, we're raising you to be self-sufficient in the world so you don't need us. But this happens at a sports level. It happens at a governmental level. It happens, I think, in every system. And the question is, what's the balance, right? Because I'm with you 100%. Most things seem like balance is the right thing, right? If you have no government, that's kind of a problem. If you have totalitarian government, that's kind of a problem. Like, what's the middle ground? I think we can all kind of realize that extremes are usually problematic. Yeah, what's interesting about this conversation to me is that you're grounding your businesses and your pursuits in Trampoline with almost, you could say, deeper principles about life or the universe or physics or biology or game theory or like deep ideas. And I think this is quite cool because I think those are the first principal concepts with which we can build awesome structures and awesome organizations. A lot of people don't have them. They try to start at the top. Like, they try to get the solution as opposed to understanding the cause of how things happen. I find your ideas quite...
Well, and no, I appreciate it. And I call it the biological approach to coaching, and it is a biological approach. If you talk to a traditional gymnast and even a parkour practitioner, they tend to talk in terms of Newtonian physics, equal and opposite reactions and torque twists and tilt twisting and this, that, and the other, and contact twisting and all these different types of twisting, but there's all fundamental mechanics. I'm more interested in saying, well, how do I take a living, breathing creature that has its own proclivities, that wants to do its own, destiny, we'll call it, and how do I either help them get onto the path that, they keep telling me that they want, like almost like a therapist in a sense, or how do I stop them from jumping off a cliff that they don't see right in front of them, right? And that's a completely different thing, because when you're coaching in this way, I use a lot from B.F. Skinner. I love Skinner. And I know he has a really bad reputation. I think a lot of people just didn't really dig into it enough. Personally, I'm not going to get into all that. But I use a lot of that very basic construct that if you want people to be their best version of themselves, whether it's in a sport, in society, or even towards themselves internally in their own dialogue, there needs to be a very simple goal to achieve. And then there needs to be a little, degree by degree, a little piece of cheese every little step of the way that keeps them positively thinking. We call this the positivity cycle. So when I hear coaches yelling at athletes, I go, oh, you could have done better if you just, got them to go a little bit farther. And I see this in coaching all the time. The coach will say, oh, I'm a really good coach, Greg. I'm like, okay, well, walk me through this back fold, a backflip with a 360, we'll say. Which is a notoriously tough skill for kids to kind of get their heads wrapped around. And pun accidentally intended, I don't know. And what happens is that they basically do a backflip. Then the coach says, okay, great. Now you're going to add a half twist. And then the kid kind of does this sort of half thing, half cartwheel in the air. And then the coach says, okay, great. Now add another half. You're so close there, Johnny. And then Johnny doesn't know where he is because he's not on this rotational pathway. What he is just kind of learn these sort of blocks, right? And he's trying to stick blocks together. But instead, it's like, no, Johnny, if like the B.F. Skinner video of him teaching a pigeon to do a 360, you're just getting them to go a little bit farther every step of the way. And I literally do this with foam blocks. It's really fun to watch because it works the same. You don't have to hand spot the kid. They get to kind of give themselves motivation because, hey, Johnny, all right, do a backflip and look at the block. He does a backflip and looks at the block. He turns literally 1 degree. All right, Johnny, and I move the block a little bit. I get him to move the block, actually, but same deal. Then he moves a little forward. Flip, twist, do, 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 and he works all the way around. We've had kids that haven't been able to do a back full ever and learn it at the middle of a trampoline park, a busy trampoline park, in literally 2 minutes. And I timed it just for fun. You know what I mean? And they don't fall because they're taking such small bite-sized pieces and you don't ever get out of control. You're going to do a 180? You can say, Johnny, how many steps did you just skip? Oh yeah, 180 steps you just skipped. Never mind that each degree can be infinitely divisible, right? So yeah, it's infinite how many steps you actually just skipped. No wonder you don't get it, right? And then the coach, high-fives them when they get the back full. But the problem's like, well, yeah, but the kid just memorized it. You're punching numbers on a Turing machine hitting a bunch of dials, an athlete skill pops out, and then you're giving them cheese at the end, but the kid has no idea what they did, why they did it, or what trajectory they were on in the first place. So now when the coach isn't there, now the kid literally is lost, doesn't know what to do, falsely thinks that they know what they're doing because they got all this credit from the coach throughout the whole process. But as soon as the environment changes, which does a huge number on your brain, then all of a sudden the kid's gets lost move syndrome, now is locked into a tightrope walking situation where I either can do it because it's a very controlled circumstance, or I'm completely screwed and I need someone to save me. And then these coaches still pat themselves on the back and say, look at what a great coach I am. I'm like, you destroyed that child and they don't even know it, and you don't even know it, right? And that it's scary to me. It actually hurts me. I'm getting tingly just thinking about it. I don't like it. I watch it all the time, and it's just my educational process is to try to break that habit and teach people that no, it's degree by degree, guys, on every axis, every way, even every position. Your body can change it by degree, by degree, by degree, by degree.
Value
you don't go from
in
pint to
learning,
pail.
like in experiencing all those degrees. So when you get lost in the air or something, what to do?
100%, because we did a fun test. I called the spatial awareness quotient. I made this in university just for fun, and we put a bunch of traditional athletes through it. It's very simple conceptually. I put a bit more math into it, obviously, but you basically take a bunch of skills. You put 1/4 degree rotation, 1/4 degree twist, and a handful of positions. I just scribble them on a piece of paper, fold them up, put them in a hat. All right, Johnny, pick your positions or your skill. And they got to pick them out. It's like, okay, you're going to do 2 3/4 rotation and 1 1/4 twist with a straddle position somewhere in the flip. All right, Johnny, you have 30 minutes to go build that skill. They failed. Every one of them. All they do is run to the trampoline and just start hucking and chucking themselves and throwing themselves in every which way. The coach is saying, well, I train them how to be safe. I'm like, does that look safe to you? When they are now being introduced into an experience that they haven't already been told or fed the answer to, they literally are completely brain dead and have no idea what's going on. Would you call that good coaching? And it takes 10 minutes for me to demonstrate this. They all go, oh, I get it now. I break it down. We build it degree by degree on all axes. And then it's like Jenga blocks. You just build them, and the better and tight your Jenga stack is at the bottom, the higher you can build without the whole thing toppling over, right? Same thing in acrobatics. And we teach them how to do that in the course of a day, and they switch their brain on how they think about applying to all skills, because then when I then do it again, they go, oh, I get it now. Okay, degree by degree, piece by piece, Greg, and they are kind of, chanting this by the end of the clinic, and it's all funny and, it's all games, but it's real. They really now are thinking differently how to build their skills.
I've never learned the back full. Can't ever figure it out because the coaches always say, all right, now look over your shoulder. It's choke the teddy bear is what I was taught, but I never figured it out. So I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm like spinning the opposite direction. I'm like, screw that, whatever. I don't need to learn this skill anyway, but I always wanted to. Never figured it out.
It's not hard if you break it down into a heck of a lot more steps than choking stuffed animals. I like that. I'm laughing half-heartedly there at that kind of metaphor to even use with a human being, never mind potentially children, and stuff like that. And
maybe it was
and that's, yeah, I'm not even getting to that one. I'm just nitpicking now.
Like it's reach, and you pull the teddy bear. I don't know, man. That's what I was.
Let's hope it's that.
Maybe he told me. Maybe we were joking that it was choking. I don't know. Anyway, we don't have too much more time, but I do have two questions that I want to learn about your perspective on the Freestyle Trampoline Association, and I think there's some overlap that maybe people in the parkour world can at least sit on and think about. 2 parts. We'll do the first one, and then when we get done, we'll go to the second one. Money versus the community wants. So you're building this association. How do you balance, okay, here's a financial opportunity, and okay, here's what the community wants, here's what the athletes have charged me with, or here's what my creative vision says we need. How do you balance those? How do you decide what direction to go? How do you decide how to prioritize? How do you work those into your decision making? And ultimately, how do you make decisions with those different, you could say, polarizations, maybe?
I'll try to keep it simple. There's a lot of different ways we could go with that question. It's a good question. I'll try to keep it succinct. So basically, it's a democracy. Very simple. I own some voting rights, we'll call it. the community owns some voting rights, and then our business partners and investors own some voting rights because everyone's coming to the table with something unique, so they get to be heard for their individual, strengths and weaknesses, actually, right? So when the athletes are coming to us, we say something like, okay, guys, what do you want? Oh, well, I want ABC. I want to get sponsors, or I want more promotion on my YouTube channel, or I just want to be able to get a good job at a trampoline park locally because that's actually really easy for me and low hanging fruit, whatever it is. We say, okay, well, then if this is what you want, then let us help you get that. They basically, it's more like a menu. So you can think of the FTA more like a store. If we're going to have a metaphor, it's like a Walmart essentially. And we have lots of offerings for all different types of personalities. And people come into the store like a revolving door, and they have a Walmart greeter, and that's usually me or Trish, my business. Oh, hello, welcome to the FTA. What can I do for you? Oh, well, I'm here to learn how to do better snowboarding tricks. Oh, well, great. We have that over there in aisle 3. And here's the price ranges from free to then really committed to where we're flying across the world working with the Germany Olympic team or the Ski Canada team, and they're paying good money for that, obviously, because that's a more valuable product, right? But then Johnny over here says, look, I'm starting my Marku calls me up a week before World Champs this year. Marku's a flipper and a very talented one. He's now a videographer. He's like, hey, Greg, I want to come and I want to get a media pass at your World Champs. Can I come do that? I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Let's do a value trade then. Because again, nothing's free. He's using essentially the stage that we're paying for and working towards to then boost his YouTube channel. But then we're also using the content that he would get. And also he already has 300,000 followers, and we're asking for some reverse promotion from him. So it's okay, perfect. You come in, you got to cover your own stuff, but we'll give you the stage. We'll give you all the content that you want. You could do whatever you want. You don't have to tag us or anything. Just knowing that our stuff's in your video will still give us some ancillary benefits and all that. And he said, yeah, this is great. If he had come back and said, well, no, I want to do this or this or this, that would have been a negotiation. And we would have had to look at the terms of the agreement and said, okay, does this make sense financially or ethically or, promotionally to, do this? Or is there a brand we can team you up with? I offered to team up with a couple of brands, and he said, no, it's okay, Greg. I'd rather do it on my own. Okay, I'm offering. They take what they want. I offer what I can, and they choose. And it's very simple. And then from our side, the business side, we say, okay, guys, well, you have broadcasters. And I'll give you a perfect example. We added in a or a bonus for landing the final skill. We didn't do that before in any of the years because a lot of them, they just land in a heap kind of thing, but the broadcasters we talked to say, hey, I don't know if they did well or not. Like, can you tell them that they have to land the final skill on their feet? So there's a clear, for the uneducated audience that there's a winner essentially, or a good or bad. So I know what I'm cheering for. Right. And I said, so we went to the community, said, guys, we're going to offer in a bonus structure that, BF Skinner, we're going to give you cheese if you land the final skill. I asked if they want to do it. They all said, yeah, okay, more bonus. That's fine for me. Great. Okay. Well, they could have said no, but they didn't. So I can only take their vote, so we take their vote. Then you see this over the last year, we saw not all of them, 80% of them started now reducing the risk of their final skill to get that bonus. So now that helps again everyone. The broadcaster got what they want because now you have a more uneducated audience viewing pleasure, we'll say. They understand what's going on a bit more. We actually reduce the risk, but they get an extra bonus, and it actually makes it easier for them to do the skill because they can then take a little bit of a breather instead of having to think, oh God, I got to do a quint on my last skill when I'm not ready, which is bad for them as well. So all three parties win, and my decision process making the outcome or outlook at least is always about trying to find a way how all parties benefit to the equal amount measure of what they're contributing in to what they're getting out. So there's at least an equality over the board over time. It obviously goes up and down, and sometimes they're volunteering with us where we're not paying them a penny, but and they're bringing their drones and they're helping out and setting up trampolines for 6 hours, and they're not getting paid. But then all of a sudden we're getting them in front of millions of people on OTT channels that then validates a sponsorship that they're getting from another company, which they wouldn't get without us having done that. So in the wash, it all evens out, and we work very hard on making sure that they believe it, that we're trying to do it, and that we can validate why it is so,
Synergy.
so that they keep kind of turning the system.
And win-wins, I think, are the key. Too many people think about win-lose, and I think win-wins when it comes to working with others is ideal. Have you ever experienced things, though, where there was a conflict? So the broadcaster wants this, and the athletes are like, we do not want that. Have you ever dealt with those? Or maybe not. Maybe you think like everything has a way that can be synergized.
Yeah. Well, everything has a way to be synergized. If I'm smart enough at the time to think of the answer overnight, then that's a different question. And there's a lot of times when we have not been able to be synergized, and someone has to either lose or win that immediate interaction, but then with the hopes of fixing it in the future so that it's not a consistent sore point. Right. But most people are pretty forgiving, and they want to see the community grow. So they'll be willing to say, Greg, I didn't quite agree with what you did there. I didn't like that. But you know what? I'll put up with it for this time, but can we chit chat about it after the event or whatever it is? And I'm very happy to then have that conversation. I'll give you an example. And it's something we are fixing for this year. Is that we were saying, hey guys, when you go to your qualifiers, so if you have a qualifier in Switzerland, the top 3 get to go to world champs. The top 1 place that gets a sponsorship from that trampoline park as a prize. So we cover, the I don't know, $1,500 or whatever the total is to get you over to London. And then the others have to get their own way there. We just cannot afford to fly people over and over. It can't be done. And most sports do not do this unless you've been around for many, many years and have huge sponsors, definitely not in the infancy stage that we're still in. So everyone understands that. So it's okay, no problem. We had Emily that flew her own way, and Crystal that flew her own way from America just because they wanted to be part of it. So the vast majority of the community knows that this is just a reality, but they know that, hey, we're trying to get sponsors to cover you and go. I was saying, hey guys, and I remember one of the flippers, I won't say his name because I don't think that's it matters, but he said, I said to him, hey, it would be nice that even though you're second and third, and even though the park is not really covering you, how about you tag them and promote them a little bit anyway? Say thank you, because they did still spend money to put on the qualifier, so that you guys, and then we dump that money into the world champs. So you wouldn't have a world champs without them. So you kind of owe them at least a thank you, So hey, maybe you give them a thank you by tagging them in some stuff. Well, no, they're not really representing, they're not really doing anything for me. And so therefore we're not doing it, Greg. I'm like, but hold on, they are doing something for you, because without them doing the structure, none of this exists, and you're just, again, in your backyard, and all that sort of stuff. And we didn't quite see eye to eye, and I don't know if we will. I have to chit chat with this individual and a couple others that brought up a similar issue. And we have to figure out what that looks like. But then my solution again becomes, okay, well, let's just hunt for more sponsors so that we don't have to put the athletes promoting brands that aren't obviously helping them. But I still think that there should be a little bit of a thank you to the ones that have put in money into the pot. So, but then at the same time, you look at it from their perspective, well, yeah, but I bought a trampoline and I have flown to all these other events over the years and not had a sponsor. And if you tallied up the investment, maybe it would be somewhat even. So this is unfair for me to ask that, you know what I mean? So there is always this kind of unknowing, and solution. And the solution to me is always usually work harder. My dad, I used to play hockey as a kid, like a good Canadian. And his famous line was always, when I was in the penalty box, is don't trip your opponent, just learn to skate faster. And that's it. And I always stick to that. Learn to skate faster. Even if the critics are trying to hook you and say stupid things that are uneducated and unvalidated every way, and you know it, don't waste your time even turning around and addressing them. Just skate faster, and you'll forget that they even exist. And I don't even remember any of my critics. They've all just now gone away because they're not getting me talking to them anymore and reciprocating their hate back and forth. Just skate faster. So with these, periodic conflicts, not too often, most of the time, it's, hey, we're good. And everyone's like, yeah, let's go, let's try this. And they're very happy about it. And we have a very good approval rating, or we wouldn't be still in charge, we'll say. I don't like to look at it like we're in charge. I would say leading the pack, we'll say, and trying to be like their coach, essentially. But we have had bumps along the road for sure with the brands too. We had a live stream that didn't work last year. The brands weren't happy about that. I couldn't do anything about it because the guy runs up to me 10 minutes before the show starts and says, by the way, the satellite truck broke and I don't have a backup line because I'm an idiot. Oh, okay. So what do I do about that? Oh, I don't know. Oh, okay. Well, the show must still go on, but now we're paying that debt still, because then the brand pulls back on their investment because of that issue. I have to ultimately pay that. But then I got to figure out that solution, because I can't just go and call up the broadcast company and start complaining. Like, again, don't waste your time tripping people. Just skate faster. Be smarter about how we pick our broadcast teams. Be smarter how we deal with the teams that we work with. Just be better. You know what I mean? And instead of focusing on meh, 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 blame game, and all that, no, just focus on how you're going to be better,
I
not
love
get
it.
yourself
I
into
love
that
that
situation
fantastic
anymore.
idea.
And that's
And
another
success
tenet of my beliefs.
cures many ills, both in community and people, and also in real life. So, one thing I wanted to say too was whoever that athlete was who didn't want to promote the
Yep.
brand, and
Yep.
I obviously don't know enough about the situation to comment on it specifically. But what I will say that I found in my life is that when we give, we get. And it's counterintuitive if you haven't been taught that growing up. But you give, you give, you give, you give, and it always comes back, whether it's in relationships, whether it's financially, whether it's an opportunity. I obviously have a company. It's called Take Flight. It's a parkour shoe company, and a ton of people want free gear. And my thought has always been, hey, like if you bought gear and then you like posted about it and made some really cool stuff, we'd send you free gear, Or like everyone wants to be sponsored, but they don't really love the brand. And it's like, dude, if you were shouting out the brand a bunch, we'd probably just send you free gear because like, hey, like if you give to us, we're going to give to you. We want to support people who support us, right? And that just becomes this upward spiral of synergy and community. So I think I'm getting better at the whole giving thing because I think in other times I've been a little closed off in my life. It's kind of maybe a scarcity paradigm, but I think we live in an abundant world with abundant opportunities. There's some really crappy people in the world. They're few and far between from my experience. Most people are friendly, they're open. If you treat people kind, they're kind to you, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm like, give, and then watch it come back, right? And it's just what happens in life.
Well, it's funny because I'm the same sort of way, and my parents always said you always have to over deliver. My business partner Trish always says the first rule of any being successful in anything is over deliver. You might think that your services are worth $1,000 or whatever. Well, you better give them $2,000 worth of value, and don't even dare pretend that it should be even. It never is. That's not how people operate. Like we said at the very beginning of the conversation, they're always looking for that discount. But I also see that the athletes, they're not, uncapitalistic. People like to say that the young people, they're about equality, and it's all the older generations that, they're greedy capitalists. I'm like, no, man, all you young kids are capitalists. What are you talking about? You're looking for free stuff. You're looking for every event I do. I'm getting message. Oh, Ray, if I come and film and tag you a couple times, can I get free tickets? I'm like, how many followers you got? 10. I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? And stuff like this. And it happens all the time. There's always, little subtle ways that they're doing this all the time. You know what I mean? So I don't think anyone is impervious to the capitalism, let's say that issue, we'll say. It's just part of our DNA. And they're looking for the deal with the best brands. And, Trish, my business partner, I've mentioned a couple of times, will tell you openly that, there's no loyalty. When she was dealing with the Subaru Rally team, they had multi-million-dollar budgets and all that sort of stuff. And as soon as they got a better tire company that was going to pay more, they dropped the last one. That was it. And the athletes did the same thing. They didn't care if it was McLaren or Honda or whoever it was. Whoever's going to pay more, that's what I'm taking. And this is just a consistent trend. And so when people play the capitalism is bad card, that is just a disguise that they're using. They may not understand it because they're being capitalist by using the capitalist card in a very subconscious sort of way, but they're looking for that deal and they're looking to get as much for the least amount as possible. That's the rule of human behavior. How do I get the most doing the least? And that everyone's doing that. And I'm also doing that. If I could work half the hours I work and still get triple the amount of output, why wouldn't I do it? It's just logical, right? So I don't blame people for being that way. I think that's just the way it works. And I think a lot of the growth, if you talk to any of the, let's call them the intellectuals these days, I hate that word, but if you talk to all these guys nowadays, and they'll contribute a lot of the growth and the opportunities that you were just talking about to the fact that capitalism created those opportunities because it created the motivation and the demand and the reward system to have people want to get off their butt and invent a Dyson vacuum cleaner that's better than the old one that kept breaking when, I was even a kid and stuff like that, and iPods and things like this. And, Spotify that's revolutionizing the music industry and all that. So without that kind of, discounted behavior, we'll say, and that reward system, you don't get any of those inventions. So you got to take it for what it is. Yeah, there's a downside, but there's also an upside. And I think if you look at the overall trajectory of human behavior, We are clearly making a decision, and we want inventions and cool new stuff much more than we
Yeah.
want equality
Well,
and
there's lots
fairness.
to unpack there. We could get to, like, different political structures and the size of the organization,
Mhm.
and all sorts of stuff. I would say more or less, I think we are aligned in this idea. I love the idea you brought today about value exchange and how humans are always looking for the better deal. They're always looking to get more value than they put in. And that's the idea when you go and buy a hamburger or you go buy a pair of shoes or whatever what it is. It's like, is this exchange a good exchange for me? And if it's not a good exchange, then people don't do it. And it's not always a financial exchange. It could be a time exchange. It could be an emotional exchange. We're exchanging, but we're exchanging things all the time. And we're always trying to find that we're always trying to better ourselves or better our situations in those exchanges. And I think I haven't thought very much about that. And this conversation today has helped me think more about that and catalyze me thinking more about that, which I'll do. So thank you for bringing that today.
I was saying thanks for bringing me on your podcast. It was a good discussion because even when I'm
Yeah.
talking about these stuff, I'm also repacking it in my own head and rethinking it as well too. So it's good just to be able to have these conversations more often. I think that would also help society at large. I think a lot of people are just nervous to have these conversations unless they're an intellectual or unless they have a PhD. They don't just, but then, the other half are just being belligerent. So there's a balance there. But if we could find a way to have more of these conversations, constructive conversations, where it's not there's a winner or a loser, it's just let's throw some ideas together and see what comes out of it. I think the society would be a
Yeah,
lot more
I think
positive
we're
place
moving. I
than
think we're
it
moving
seems
in a
to be
great
at this
way.
point.
Good things are coming. So, and the podcast realm is, I think, helping that to happen through these long form discussions where people honestly and authentically share their ideas in nuanced ways. And we find that we have more in common than we have different. And I think that's a powerful thing that moves us forward as a species, as a culture, as a community, as a sport, whether it's parkour or trampoline or the freestyle trampoline association or parkour this, parkour that, this gym, this park, that park, this brand, that brand. Uh, I think there's more good when we understand each other and when we work together. So I think we're getting there. And I appreciate you having a conversation about trampoline and parkour. And I think there's a lot of value that people will take from your experience. Let's do it again sometime. I had some more questions, Greg, and we're out of time today. But let's talk again some other time, perhaps about next time you have a big event. Next time you have a big event that we can blast out there, maybe we'll do a quick podcast or we'll just share your content because there's some overlap there with our athletes. So stay in touch with me and let's bring more attention to what you're doing because I think it's awesome. I want to see you just continue to find awesome success. And I want to be the guy that says, oh, yeah, I talked to Greg before he became Greg. You know what I mean? That'd be a great experience.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support. And I know the community is going to enjoy this conversation too. And there's a lot of parents that are going to enjoy kind of hear a little bit more about behind the scenes. We've been very quiet over the last few years because, again, it's been a development process. Almost had to kind of give ourselves a PhD in business development, So we're kind of a little bit shy to say too much besides sharing some crazy videos that kind of got people's eyebrows up. And now we're like, let's have a real conversation, guys. The Olympics is now looking at what we're doing. The X Games is already looking at what we're doing because of the team we brought on to help us behind the scenes a little bit, which will remain unmentioned at this point. But we have a very good team behind us, so we really want to see this succeed. And because of that, we want to start now really telling the story of at least the philosophical underpinnings of why we got here, what we're doing, and where we want to go, so that we can at least have a constructive conversation with the traditional side and the other parkour and tricking and sub communities like Jimmy did the Adrenaline World Games. We got him on CBS this year. You know what I mean? And we can help each other. And I would like to see a world where the parkour and the tricking and the slackline guys and everyone comes together into a big event. And that would be my dream in the next 10 years, to see like a Woodstock of action sports with all these digital sports come together.
I love
So I
your
think this
vision.
is all leading towards
Let's
that.
see what happens. We're here to support you. Thank you, Greg, for your time and good luck with everything.